And next talk, we have someone else also from that helps with Women Who Go. A little bit higher up, according to her, she's chief enforcer or shadow leader. I'm not really sure about what that means. But she's going to be talking about GopherSource, which is a program that aims to help developers be more efficient when they're trying to contribute back to the Go community, especially into the Go programming language itself. So I think she's ready. She's not ready. Oh, that's cute. Yeah, that's what you get when you work with Ashley McNamara. You get cute slides.
Oh my gosh, all the time.
Which we're gonna get on stage in a second, and that's not it.
I'm there, man.
Cool. Okay. So you can use this mic right here. If you want to use the clicker, do you want to use the clicker? No. Okay. Cool. Okay. Round of applause for Carolyn. Woo.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Van Slyck, Chief Enforcer for Women Who Go. Don't ask me what that means, but I really like the title, so I just kind of went with it. I'm a senior software developer at Microsoft, and I have a super fun job. I do whatever I want in the open source space, and then I talk about it, so cool. I'm a total open source nerd. I've been doing open source since 2000, don't do the math, and I've kind of worked my way up through thinking I knew what open source was all about, to realizing that it sucked and I hated it, and then going, wait, no, I think it's really cool, I'm gonna try it again. So I started off doing themes for WordPress. It was actually this really esoteric thing called Geekblog, if anyone's old enough to remember that. And then I slowly moved up into more interesting things. The first piece of open source that I ever did that was really popular was Atlassian Plugins, for Stash, for Bitbucket, for Bamboo, things like that. I would have real companies emailing me on the weekend, years after I wrote a plugin, saying it was critical for their business, that I would push updates. I just laugh, delete. Yeah, that's cute. And that was kind of my introduction to open source, and it was my introduction to how to burn out on open source. I had managed to become just popular enough that people depended on me, but I was missing this key ingredient that made it actually sustainable and worth my own time. At this point, you notice my job is open source. That seems weird. I burnt out on it. Why am I trying to do it full time now, Carolyn? What's wrong with you? And the answer is, actually, that's what made it sustainable for me, was switching from something that was feeling guilty on the weekends to it's my 9 to 5, and they're paying me a lot of money, so I really like it. So GopherSource is an initiative. It's not anything real or official or whatever, but it sounds cute, and I get to use Ashley's Gophers, so I went with it. The idea is that a lot of people have come to me over the years, and especially now that I've come to Microsoft and I'm a little more known, people always ask, how do I get into this? How do I get a really cool job where no one tells me what to do and I play in open source? Because obviously that's what it's like. And I realized that I wasn't scaling. And not only was I not scaling, but I was making my life miserable again, trying to help people, trying to be that one-on-one mentor for every single person. And so I said, we need something a little bit bigger, a little bit better. So GopherSource is my effort to kind of distill a lot of my, please don't do this, it'll hurt your life, and put it on a website, and then work with projects in the open source community to help out and support both maintainers themselves, and also make it easier for new contributors to come into projects, and try to make more sustainable projects in general. What I really want is to make the project that I really needed when I was an 18-year-old coming into this and had no clue what I was doing. Yeah. So I've talked a bit about open source a lot. Open source, it's so great, but I don't do it. I do closed source. Why does anyone care? And the answer is you don't have to care. It is perfectly fine. I have no problem with anyone who does closed source code. That's how I got started. But if you're interested in getting into it, I really want to make it clear why you would bother doing this. Because if you just blindly go in with open source is going to be amazing because people tell me it's amazing, and Kelsey Hightower, so yeah. That's a logical train of thought I hear from a lot of people, and it's a little bit off. So let's kind of break this down. What really do you get out of open source? Do you become internet famous? Does your Twitter blow up? Do suddenly people throw jobs at you and whatever? And the answer is like, no. There's different ways to do open source, and I'm gonna walk through that from here. How do you do open source in a way that if you want to become super public, visible, and a leader, you can actually gain that through operating in open source, but it isn't a given. It has to be something that you've consciously decided, and it needs to be, dare I say it, a little political at times. So yeah, there's more to it than that. And unfortunately, for a lot of us introverts, people who want just the best thing to win out, that's not how open source works. Open source is the community, not the code. I mean, raise your hand if you've put an MIT license on something and put it on GitHub. How many millions of dollars do you have? How many job offers just for that MIT license? Nobody. That's right. The reason why open source is as amazing as it is, because for some reason, it tricks some of the most talented people in the world to give their time away for free and build amazing things. And so what makes that really cool is these communities. So let's talk a little bit about what makes open source, what you see in every single open source 101 do your first pull request workshop, and what I actually value as a maintainer and as someone who would recommend you to be hired doing an open source job. The list looks very different. Code is important, but it's not as important to me as everything else that it takes to ship a successful product. What's kind of weird about open source is that I don't have a project manager. I don't have a manager in general. I don't have anybody in marketing. I don't have anyone in tech writing. I don't have anyone to support me. I need to wear all the hats. And if I just write code, I actually didn't create anything that is consumable by other people, except sometimes by accident. Maybe I'm just relying on you going the extra mile and reading my source code to figure out how to run it. But again, that'll work for some things, especially if you've like managed to land on a magical project that there's a high need and people are willing to do that. But otherwise, the reason why people are so pumped about certain things like Kubernetes, it's not because like the tech that's involved with Kubernetes is that groundbreaking, but because of the community they've built around it and how easy it is to get people into it and get excited. So I want you to think a little bit about some of your like open source heroes, for example. Maybe it's me. Oh, that'd be great. It's totally not me though. But think of some of these people and think about how you even know their name. Do you really know their name because they contribute the most to an open source project? Probably not. I'd like how many people can name like 6 people on the Go team? Everything they do is open source, but at the same time, unless they're doing these other things as well, they're not visible and they're not gaining those values out of open source code beyond that license. This is my GitHub profile. So some people may look at this and go, Carolyn, you don't write a lot of code. I digress. I'm very technical, super technical, such technical. But I also spend a ton of my time doing code reviews, creating issues for other people to pick up, identifying questions and fielding people to the right thing, identifying when we need to be writing docs because I'm answering the same question over and over and over in 3 different mediums, and just getting people into my project so that I don't have to be doing it all by myself. And our heroes, if you look at them, you'll see a pattern. They are all interacting with people. They are all doing the other list. Sure, they're writing code. Why? Because it's fun. But they're doing the things that make these projects sustainable and worth shipping. So what does it really take to get into open source? Again, a lot of people focus on the first pull request, which is like the silliest thing to focus on because it's over in a flash. It may have been fun. It may have been not. You do it all the time, and yet it doesn't actually yield, oh, now I'm doing open source. You do it once and you're done, right? There's a little bit more to it than that. So the very first step, actually, is my time-honored tradition of lurking and watching and not actually talking to anyone because I'm very nervous and shy. And this is actually a really important step because this is your time. This is your life. You have so many seconds. Are you going to spend it with a bunch of jerks online being mean to you and not thanking you for your code contribution? Or are you going to work with amazing people and have a really good time and have it be a rewarding hobby or side project? So pay attention. If you don't like how people are being treated, there are good communities, move on. So let's say you find an amazing community and you find an issue to work on. Maybe someone gave you like a little gimme. They're like, here you go, please fix this typo. Something like that. You do your first PR. And what's interesting about your first PR is not the code. What's interesting is that interaction. That's the first time you go, hello world, I want to play with you, I want to write code. Will this be fun? Let's try it out. It's like the first date, right, of open source. And so like many first dates, you don't always want a second, okay? Depending on how it goes, you're like, nope, I'm done. Linux kernel, you're not for me, okay? And sometimes you enjoy it and you want to do more, okay? Pay attention to your gut feeling on that. Pay attention to how you were treated. It's important to understand that as a new contributor, you deserve to be treated well. There are people who will treat you well, so value yourself and find them, okay? So this is my favorite place to be in the contribution ladder. I never stay here very often because I'm like a glutton for punishment, but being a casual contributor. Now, what does that mean? It means that I can come and go as I please, drop in 1 month with a pull request, it gets merged, it's not a horrible experience, and then if I don't do anything for the next 6 months, no one really notices. They're not like, Carolyn, I really need you to, go over here, can you merge this PR, can you review this, or like nothing. It's cool, people appreciate you being there, but no one needs you there. In my recommendation, like my world, if I wasn't silly, this is where I would live. I would live as a casual contributor, cat in a box. But some people, they stick around a little bit longer. It's not every 6 months that you randomly contribute to a different project, which is legit. That's one way to participate in open source. But let's say you find a place where you've got a couple friends, you enjoy it, you're solving problems at work, and it happens to line up with your interests. You become a member. Now, what's the difference between a member and a casual contributor? In my mind, in my book, it would be, I can help out and do extra things. Maybe I'm able to do a code review and actually give it that little magical green check mark in GitHub that says someone's reviewed it. Or maybe I'm able to answer questions and issues and go, actually, I think this has been answered in our doc, blah, 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 go look at it, close. Things like that. You're able to help out here and there with the project, but again, you're not in this critical path of shipping things. So it's another magical place. This is where I live. Cheeseburger cat, regretting nothing. You have all the power, all the fame, all the, yes, I can control everything. I have root. I regret nothing. As you can tell, it's probably a little uncomfortable though. Because all of a sudden, you've gone from someone who can walk away at any time to someone who is probably important to that project. And all of a sudden, you have dreaded commitment and responsibility. Depending on your personality, this is great, and it makes you feel excited to get out of bed every day. And for other people, it's like, I can't handle this. No, I want to just sit and watch Netflix or, I don't know, do anything that normal humans do other than programmers, So one thing that people don't often talk about with open source at all is that eventually you stop. You don't work on the same piece of code forever for 20 years. Every, merry-go-round has an end. You need to hop off. And this is where the community comes in. Let's say that I wrote an amazing Atlassian plugin that did such important business things for people, and I wanted to stop doing it. Well, I was the only one who wrote it. I'm the only one who knows it. I've accepted random pull requests, but that's about it. I didn't really build a community. There's no one else but me. As soon as I stop, it's dead. That's a 20-foot jump off a ladder. It feels bad. And oftentimes you climb back up again because someone sends you an email, heartfelt, saying, it's just, a 3-line pull request. And if you have a community, though, it's easy. You hop down, friends help you down, because someone else is there to also be that maintainer, to keep it going, to care about it so that you don't have to anymore. And this is what I'm getting to with the whole, how do you do open source sustainably? How do you do open source in a way that doesn't burn you out? I burnt out twice and left. So I kind of know what I'm talking about in this regard. And for me, it comes down to the crushing guilt. If you've ever worked with me, you know that I say this like at least once a week, probably every day. And the crushing guilt is this. It's Sunday night. It's 5 o'clock. I got a pull request, though, at 3 o'clock on Friday, but I didn't want to look at it then. But in my head, the entire weekend, I knew it was there waiting for me. But I was like, I don't want to give up my weekend. No, I don't need to do this. Darn those people. Why are they asking this of me? Why am I such a bad person? Like, my anxious type A personality drives me nutty when stuff like this happens. And then it's Sunday night. I want to watch the Doctor Who premiere. And instead, I'm worried about this pull request. I didn't do it, but I just lost that whole weekend of feeling guilty about it. And then the next day, Monday morning, well, I could work on it, but then I have real work. You know, most of us aren't paid to do open source full time. This is what I mean by the crushing guilt. And for me personally, this is why I burn out. Because I care too much. I can't set it down. I can't not think about it. And it doesn't have to be this way. So I hope I answered this question already. But if you're not sure, this is the answer. Okay? For me, I could be an aberration. Who knows? But for me, this is why I care so much about a community. One, I'm a hobbit. I work remote in Chicago in a little house with 3 cats. And that's my human contact, so I like communities. But also, it's how I am able to do this and not make it become this thing that I can never set down. So this is where I come up with the idea of sustainable open source. Other people will talk about this, and they're talking about money. How do you pay a developer, Patron, whatever, Patreon? I don't know, I always call it the liquor, sorry. I don't know why. Who knows? But for me, it's like, if you paid me, did that make my Sunday night any better? No, it didn't. It actually made it worse. Now I feel even more obligated. So for me, sustainable open source has a lot more to do with how I'm feeling inside than the money, all that. So what I'd like to talk about here, because we only have 25 minutes and I'm eating them up rather quickly, is say you're looking at how to get into an open source project. Let's talk about a couple that I've been working with over the past year and how well it's been working for them, bringing in new people and helping to prop up and sustain our maintainers. So I'm going to start out with the obvious. This says Go Community because it's really cute. Okay, that's why it says Go Community. I'm really talking about upstream Go, the actual programming language. And it's kind of in like this weird position because I would say this is not actually the model for an open source community that I would recommend you jump into from the get-go. And not for any reason, like no one's mean or anything like that, but some of the things that I think are extremely important about working in an open source community, the upstream Go project needs to work on a little bit more. So for example, it's basically controlled by the Go team. It's controlled by a single actor, Google, okay? We all contribute, and they have tons, hundreds, maybe thousands of contributors. But at the end of the day, the person who makes a decision is one of those people who works at Google. And you can become a maintainer, and you can +2 reviews in Garrett, which sounds scary, and I still think it sounds scary. I don't care, I'm gonna say it. I don't like Garrett. But there's like this ceiling, whereas I can become a maintainer, but can I become a project lead? Can I make decisions? Can I like reject Go modules and kick it out the door and go, I really like DEP, bring it back? No, I can't. I can't, because I don't work at Google. And that's fine. That's not democratic, but you need to understand that that's a fact about the project. So I would say in some ways this is an example of an open source project that has an open source license, but in and of itself, just the language, not the rest of the community, not all of us, it's not really a community in the way I like to think about it. So let's focus on what are some communities that I would encourage you to run to. And the biggest one with the most surface area to absorb all of you, because obviously tomorrow you're all gonna be like, yeah, Saturday, write code, would be Kubernetes. It has a ginormous community. Any one person in the Kubernetes community could leave anytime, and pretty much no one would notice. It wouldn't make anything come to a halt, which is great, because that's what stops the guilt. And they have things like the contributor experience team, which helps ramp you into the project, helps out new contributors, makes them understand what's the process, What should my expectations be? How can I go from someone who's never used Kubernetes to leading a project and making big decisions about Kubernetes? It's kind of funny because they're both coming out of Google, but run just a little bit differently. So in case I'm saying all of Kubernetes is awesome, I'm not going to tell you my shame, okay? So I am the Service Catalog chair. There isn't really like one ginormous Kubernetes, okay? There's lots of little special interest groups run by despots and various people like me. And I run Service Catalog. What the project is doesn't matter at all. But the point is, and this is why I feel like I failed, is that if I tomorrow quit Service Catalog, it would probably die. That's an example of an unhealthy community. It's amazing for new contributors, and we've grown by like 30%, 100% from like new contributors coming into the project who, for the most part, didn't know Go and had never worked in open source. And we welcome them with open arms and have brought them in, and they become valuable contributors. And it's been amazing, and I'm super pumped about it. But at the same time, I didn't have everyone in the community around this project committed to the same values. And part of that is because the community came second. The project came first. I came on a year ago and did my thing, but I did it by myself. I was the only person super bought into it. So it's a cool community, and if you'd love to contribute, please. But I will be the first one to admit it's not that, it's kind of brittle. It's kind of fragile. Here's my favorite community. And Aaron's sitting there in the front row. The Athens Project. This is something that I'm so proud of. I love talking about. And so the Athens Proxy, you've all heard about it at this point, but what's so special about it is the community came at its inception. From the very beginning, Aaron was committed, and Brian and everyone else was committed to this not being just a Microsoft thing. I know he made a ton of jokes about deploying to like Azure or something like that. I don't even use Azure, and I can use Athens, so it's totally cool. And the majority of the maintainers are not from Microsoft, and they're not from a big company. And they're just regular people who got super excited about this and saw like, here's some brand new tech in Go. How often do you get a chance to jump on it? And Aaron created a system where everyone is able to come in and make decisions, send things where they need to go. I think like a third of our issues are actually votes, which is kind of cool. We just do it as GitHub issues, thumbs up, thumbs down. So it's extremely democratic, and I want to give you an example of how healthy it is, so by how unhealthy Aaron is. So Aaron got appendicitis right before GopherCon, and we were going to do this big release, and we were able to, and no one had to DM him or ping him or ask him to make anything happen. We didn't need to stop what we were doing. We didn't need to get his approval, and all of us had merge rights, and for some reason I could do all sorts of stuff with Netlify, so it was fine. And it was because he had given his power and his privilege away as a maintainer so that he wasn't that bottleneck. So smart dude right there. I super recommend this as like a pattern to follow as far as like how to build an open source project. It's because it came from the beginning, and it kind of had this idea of we're going to make building the community as important as building the software itself. So I'm going to pitch my website real quick, mostly because this is the landing page. If you're like, I would like to be a project that Carolyn also shills and says this is a really good project to go to, let me know, submit a pull request to GopherSource. Otherwise, if you're brand new to Go and you don't know how to get started, or you've never done open source, you can go to gophersource.com, and it'll walk you through how do you find a project, what are the things you should do, how do I get an invite to this Slack thing everyone's talking about, stuff like that. Has information about the Go study group. There's lots of different ways to get involved. And over time, I keep saying I'll do more stuff with this, but this is good enough. So if there's nothing else in this, that's cool. So thank you very much, and I do hope that you give it a try and hop into open source if that's your thing. Thanks.